Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. I hope everyone's having a good day. And today we'll be talking about probably the best hero in the entire game, Darth Vader. Now, just like the other hero guides, we will be going over his base stats, which are his health, damage, and stamina. And I'll be going over his abilities, which are Lightsaber Throw, Focused Rage, and Choke. And then we'll be going over some star cards and tips for Galactic Assault, HV, and Showdown, as well as 1v1s. Getting right into the base stats here, we have a base health of 800 and a base health regen of 250. Obviously, as you can tell, it has the same base health as Anakin. However, his health values change with both star cards and abilities. Just to mention, the star card that changes his health, it's called bonus health, and it does bring his base health to 950, 50 health above what Anakin has, making him have the highest base health in the entire game. Now we have damage. He has base damage of 130 in the front and 160 in the back, making him very effective without focused rage. As we know, that's kind of more in the middle for most Saber heroes. However, that still is very, very good. Uh, Now, with focused rage, those values do change, with him putting 145 in the front and 175 in the back, obviously making a flat 15 damage increase. That is unbelievable, especially for Vader. Now, obviously, he has an incredibly high damage output, and it just allows him to be incredibly deadly, especially with the right cards. Now, moving on to stamina, we have 10 swings or 14 blocks, which is fairly decent for most Saber heroes. However, you will notice where Vader lacks is his stamina regen, as it has a 2.25-second delay, as well as a 3-second regen speed, which makes him going from a depleted stamina bar to full. It takes incredibly long, basically making stamina regen or stamina management very, very important. Vader is incredibly lacking in the area, so that's his most important part to make sure you have down. He also does have 1.7 swings per second. Now, with focused rage, his stamina values do change. It makes his stamina deplete 50% slower, thus giving him 20 swings or 28 blocks without losing his stamina bar. Vader overall can hit like a truck. You just need to be aware of his stamina as you're using it and make sure you have the ability to back up and regen it. Just to mention this before we move on, there is a star card called Surrounded by Fear, which I will get into later. However, it does give him 20% of his stamina back after he kills someone, whether that be a trooper or a hero. However, it doesn't change his overall stamina values. I just wanted to make sure you guys knew. Now, moving on to abilities, we have his left ability, which is Saber Throw. Now, it is more powerful than Maul's Saber Throw, however, it does come back slower, and you obviously will notice the difference between the two as you play with each of the characters. It does 130 damage on the initial throw as well as the return, making it deal 260 damage in total, assuming you hit both ways. There is a star card called Intensified Lightsaber Throw that does make the return hit deal 30 more damage, making it 160 on the return, increasing the total potential damage to 290. Just to mention, do not use Saber Throw while someone is in choke, because it does deal 50% less damage going both ways, assuming choke is still active. As long as choke is active on someone and you try and hit them with Saber Throw, it will do 50% less damage. Cooldown, however, is 8 seconds, which is incredibly quick when you consider all the other abilities in the game. Especially for Vader, it just makes Saber Throw that much more important. And there is a combo with Saber Throw and Choke with the return hit, basically. So if you throw it through someone and then it hits them on the back, staggering them, you can choke immediately as they are staggered, and you can get choke off. Same goes for Maul's ability, choke ability, with his Saber Throw. So that is a good combo. As well as another combo is choke, jump, hit, Saber Throw, as it allows you to do an incredible amount of damage. As you do get the choke damage, a hit, which is either 130 or 145, as well as a lightsaber throw hit. Sometimes you can get one, sometimes you can get two. However, I'd say the amount of damage is probably around 4 to 500, assuming you do it properly. Sometimes you can get a hit right after saber throw as well, so it is very, very deadly. He can also not be hit during Saber Throw, assuming you're holding block during the animation, which is really stupid in my opinion, however, it is there. Now on to Vader's middle ability, Focused Rage, which is probably considered one of, if not the best ability in the game by itself. Just to go over the stats of this ability, it gives him 200 health on top of his base health, which means he could either get 1,000 health from it or 1,150. It gives him 15 extra damage on each hit, as well as 50% slower stamina drain. This ability is incredibly powerful. Even without star cards, it doesn't matter. However, there is a star card that makes Focused Rage probably the best ability in the game. It's called Furious Resilience. It can give him 25% damage reduction while Focused Rage is active, which makes Vader an unbelievably crazy tank. Obviously, he does gain the 200 health on top of that, so it is kind of insane. The ability normally lasts 10 seconds and has a 15-second cooldown, which honestly, for what this ability does, is kind of unreal. There is a star card that does increase the time by 6 seconds called Fueling the Rage. However, it does obviously have a damage penalty of 5 damage per hit, but honestly, that's virtually negligible. Focused Rage is honestly what makes Vader as powerful as he is. It gives him pretty much a lot of bonuses without really any penalty. You can block during his animation, and also all the bonuses that he gets is kind of crazy. Uh, Literally, there is a way to not get the animation by swinging as soon as you activate it. It's a lot harder these days because they try to patch it. However, you can still do it, and sometimes during a fight, if you can't back up and do it, you can do it by swinging. Now, moving on to his third and final ability, we have Choke. Now, to me, this is easily his most devastating offensive move, as it allows for many combos, both with Vader as well as his teammates, assuming you're in HVV or even GA Supremacy. It does 86 damage per second and has a total damage of 130 by base. There is a star card that does allow him to have the increased damage per second, assuming you hit 2 people, called Last Gasp, and it increases it to 129 damage per second, assuming you hit 2 people. It also gives Vader a 20% damage reduction during the ability's obviously duration, as well as the ability lasts 1.5 seconds base. However, this can also be prolonged with a Punishing Grip star card, which makes it last 2.1 seconds, increasing the overall damage. So obviously, if you run Last Gasp and Punishing Grip, you will deal a lot of damage, to say the least, with specifically Choke. I would say it isn't necessary, however, I've honestly seen a lot of people use it just to make Vader's Choke that much more crazy. Thankfully, though, there is a 25-second cooldown timer. However, you don't really even, it doesn't matter. You don't need Choke to be effective with Vader. So, yeah. There are combos, obviously, that I mentioned before with, you know, Choke, Saber Throw, Saber Hit as well. So there's plenty of combos that you can do. However, Choke can also be used with combination to either other Blaster Heroes or Palpatine, because Palpatine's normal lightning does not take it out of him, but his chain lightning does. Same with Blaster Bolts. It does not take them out of the Choke, so you can basically insta-kill people, assuming you have heroes around you, specifically Blaster Heroes or Palpatine. So yeah, no, they're basically dead. Choke is one of the abilities that is probably one of the more scary to be in because it leaves you completely vulnerable to everyone else. So, now on to star cards, specifically for Galactic Assault. The first star card I think is a no-brainer is Furious Resilience. No question about it. Easily one of his best cards, if not the best card in this game, actually. Next is Bonus Health. Obviously, kind of another no-brainer for Vader, in my opinion. Very, very deadly. Obviously makes him even more of a tank. Now, the third card can be many cards. There are plenty of options when it comes to Vader. However, I'm going to recommend Punishing Grip just because it makes assaults that much easier, or assaults officers, specialists, and even heavies that much more easy to deal with. Mainly because it one hits all base infantry except for the heavy. But there are other cards that also are incredibly effective. The other cards are Surrounded by Fear. Uh, Obviously, you have Deflection Stamina, you have Fueling the Rage, you have plenty of other cards. Literally go through the list. I'm sure you could find a bunch of setups that you could run. Just to mention some of those setups, though, you have Last Gasp instead of Punishing Grip. So instead of, you can still one hit infantry. However, it does not allow you to one hit heavies even if you hit two people. But it does obviously make choke incredibly effective. Obviously, Surrounded by Fear, I just said. But you also have bonus health, both choke cards. Said that before, it was very effective. You also have Deflection Stamina, Surrounded by Fear, and either bonus health or Furious Resilience. Yes, I have seen people run that. There are, and it's incredibly effective. There are plenty of setups that you can run with Vader and just be incredibly effective. Vader is probably the easiest hero to use, in my opinion, in the game, even in Galactic Assault, in my opinion. Just as some general tips in Galactic Assault, do not think you're invincible. Uh, Now, while in this video I may make it seem like Vader is virtually unstoppable or invincible, he's just not. However, you can play him aggressively or defensively, depending on your own playstyle, and be effective. Vader's just kind of that good of a character. However, you can be easily killed by things like Supercharged Sentry, multiple Vanguards, or other heroes. It's really just a good tip to go for flanks as well as use choke by leading into a room, try and clear it. Vader can die, and what I've seen from a lot of newer players is that they just kind of rush into a room and think that they're unstoppable. However, they're just not. Vader is, however, a very safe choice in many respects. He is very hard to kill most of the time and can deal a lot of damage very, very quickly. However, just don't be over aggressive. Don't just rush into rooms by yourself thinking that you're God. Simply put, you can die. However, obviously, be aggressive. Vader is one of the hardest heroes to kill, and many people are very afraid of Vader, to be fair. But just be careful of like supercharged sentries or detonates. Mainly heavies, honestly. Those are your biggest enemies. Obviously, even with other heroes. However, especially with Vader, because they're really the only infantry that pose a lot of threat. Next up, we have Showdown and HVV. Unlike my star cards for Anakin, does not change. My star cards do not change between HVV and Showdown, at least normally. Even in 1v1s, it really doesn't change, but we'll get to that. My setup, personally, is Furious Resilience, Bonus Health, and Punishing Grip. I think this just maximizes Vader's effectiveness and survivability. Obviously, I've seen other setups, and I've mentioned pretty much all of them before, but just to mention them again, Bonus Health, Punishing Grip, Last Gasp, I've seen multiple times at this point, which is kind of weird. I've also seen Furious Resilience, Bonus Health, and Fueling the Rage. Obviously, both Focus Rage cards. I think both are good other setups. However, personally, I am a big fan of Furious Resilience, Bonus Health, and Punishing Grip, just because it makes Vader very scary to deal with. He has the 25% damage reduction, as well as obviously gets Focused Rage back. But I want to go over Fueling the Rage just really quickly. While it does make Focus Rage last longer, I'd rather have the ability come back to me sooner rather than the ability coming, lasting longer. Because honestly, while Focus Rage is that effective, the main reason it's that effective is because of the 200 health and the 25% damage reduction. Obviously, and the damage. However, I feel like the damage reduction makes it that much better. But making it last longer with having 5 less damage, obviously it's negligible, however, just not for me. The only time I'd really run it is if I'm getting myself constantly into like 1v4s or like basically getting teamed on multiple times. That's really when I would use it. Obviously, I think the effects that Focus Rage have when you equip it, or like not equip it, but use it, I think are incredibly, incredibly good. Just as some general tips for HV and Showdown. Obviously, the usual was stay by your team. However, really in the case of Vader, you can pull off like 4v1s, 3v1s, especially 2v1s are very, very easy. Do not be afraid of most light side heroes. I would say probably for the exception of Chewbacca, mainly because Fury's Bowcaster and Stun can lead to your death very, very quickly. I mainly because he can take out probably a chunk of your health and leave you very exposed, obviously, with Stun. With Vader, probably try and stick with at least one teammate, because honestly, then they have your back, and you are very, very easy to target, obviously, if you're alone. But if you're not, then if they try and go for your teammate, they're screwed because, well, Vader is very, very deadly from the back. So, yeah, I would just suggest sticking with your teammates there. Now, finally, we have 1v1s, which honestly I really don't feel like I have to go over because I think they're really just kind of a joke. Vader is easily the best hero in the game and the hardest character to play against, especially Saber v Saber. Even without star cards, Vader's just really, really effective. His abilities, his health, his damage output, easily the best in the game. The only real downside is the stamina, which I went over earlier, but it's easily managed once you get used to it. For me, I really don't judge players based on how good they are with Vader, mainly because of how easy he is to play. Honestly, the only tip I can really give with Vader is in 1v1s is abuse, choke, jump hit, saber throw. Or mainly because the other person will basically be immediately at half HP. Mainly for the exception of Obi-Wan, who is really the only true saber counter in my opinion. However, Rey obviously can do a good job with parry dash strike. But the final tip I'll give with Vader is don't lose a 1v1 with Darth Vader. Because the moment you do that, you will be basically the other team's gonna laugh at you. Rightfully so. To be quite frank with you, I don't think people should lose 1v1s with Vader. At least pure 1v1s. Even a good player versus a good player, the Vader should come out on top most of the time, in my opinion. But yeah, that about wraps it up for the Vader Hero Guide. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a good one.
So happy that it's over now. The pain is gone. I'm putting on my shades to cover up my eyes. I'm jumping in my ride. I'm heading out tonight. I'm solo. I'm Han Solo. I'm Han Solo.